Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Aditi and I am a first year accounting and finance student at LSE. And today's video is going to be all about the pros and cons of studying in London. So if you're considering going to Queen Mary, UCL, King's, LSE, any of them, then keep watching. Okay, so for this video I had a bit of help from my friends. I was literally like on the group chat, please give me pros and cons of studying in London because my brain wasn't working at the time and I just needed to plan the video. So a lot of these have come from my friends, thankfully, and I've added in some of my own, but we're just gonna go through them and I'll explain a bit more about each. So let's start with the pros, start with the good stuff first, and then we'll go on to the cons. Okay, so the pros. First pro is, oh by the way I have my notes here, that's why I'm looking down. But the first pro is there is always something to do as a student in London. Like you have some of the world's best music, art, theatre, all of that kind of stuff in London. And to be a student in London and to get to experience all of those things while, you know, being in the city to study, like that's an extra bonus that you get with London and not necessarily with other cities. There's a load of different clubs. I've only been to like 1/2. But there are so many that my friends have gone to and have really liked, and yeah, there is definitely a lot to do in terms of nightlife. In terms of day life, yeah, music, art, theatre. If you watched my week in the life video at LSE, you'll notice that as I was like walking to and from the station, there were a load of theatres on the way, and yeah, like if you're a student in London, it's great to be able to make use of that. Another thing is that it's very, very close to career opportunities. So if you're like me, wanting to go into finance, or if you're wanting to go into law, or any of the like really corporate careers, then London is a great place to be. There's the prospect to apply to spring weeks, which are like first year short work experience placements, and then summer internships for second year, and obviously graduate jobs as well. If you were in, I don't know, Manchester for example, you would have to travel down, that costs money, the accommodation here costs money, but if you're already here, then it works pretty well. And a lot of people that come to London as students end up staying in London afterwards for like working. So if you have a goal of working in London when you're older, then studying in London can also help you get there. So it's kind of like a natural progression that way. And talking about careers and that sort of thing and like jobs, there are loads of student jobs available during term time and during the holidays. So term time, there's a load of different restaurants around. At LSE we have SU jobs, so the SU stands for the student union. So you can apply to jobs within the student union. And just because of the city nature, there are going to be a load of businesses, and those businesses will need employees. You get the idea. And not just in term time, as I said, also in the holidays. So that can be really beneficial if you're not able to go home for the holidays and, you know, you still need that extra money. So yeah, if that's a priority for you, getting a job during term time or the holidays, then London is a good place for that. Talking about money, the government, when you get your maintenance loan, will give you a higher amount if you are in London than if you're not in London. So I mean, technically it is a pro of studying in London, because you get more money, but we'll talk a bit more about money a bit later in the video. Another thing is that the transport here is pretty okay. Like, I'm not gonna say it's the best transport in the world because it's not, but it's definitely not bad. Like, you have tubes that come, what, every 2-3 minutes? 5 minutes at the max. Like, when I'm waiting 5 minutes for a tube, I'm like, okay, this is taking a bit long. So it's very reliable, I would say. I have a friend from like up north, and he was saying that the buses here are pretty reliable as well. Like, I think most of them come like every 10-ish minutes, but obviously it depends on the individual bus. But yeah, no, the tube definitely. Although it's not pleasant at times, it is definitely a good way from getting from like one side of London to the other. But again, we'll talk about transport a bit later in the video. Lastly, a pro is the fact that London is pretty tolerant and pretty accepting. In comparison to other places, London is quite welcoming and it is very diverse. And because of that diversity, people are coming from different backgrounds, and there is that tolerance towards people that you may not necessarily get in other cities. When you walk on the streets of London, it is quite obvious that the place is trying to be accepting at least. Okay, now the cons. The first one, which you probably will have heard like 1,000 times, is that it is expensive. London is expensive, and that is no surprise to anyone. So what I meant like a few minutes ago saying that I'll come back to transport and the maintenance loan thing, the reason you get more money in London is because things are more expensive, and even though transport is good, it is expensive. And like as a commuter, if I want to get a weekly travel card, it is £53.20, I think it is, and that's just 1 week. So over the course of a month, that's like already £200 gone. You do have to be quite careful with these things. If like managing costs and like staying on top of your finances is a priority to you, then perhaps look at other cities. And another thing on commuting, if you are commuting, rush hour can get bad. I will do like a whole video on commuting, but I just want to say that London rush hour is not the one. Moving on to some other cons. One other con is that because it's a city, there's like hardly any green space. However, I'm gonna say that it's obviously more to do with central London rather than like the suburbs. So it depends where you want to live in London. If you wanted to get a house in like the suburbs and like live with a few friends, you're gonna have a lot more green space. But if you wanted to go like central, then you're probably just gonna see buildings around you, nothing much else. So, you know, like factor these things in when you're thinking about studying in London or not. Another con that's a bit more university focused is the fact that places like LSE and King's and, you know, just like the other London unis, we don't really have a campus as such. We don't really have like a centralized location for everything. And that means that it can feel a bit disjoint sometimes. Like even if you're not a commuter, it may start to feel like you're a commuter because where you're living isn't where, you know, you're having your classes and all of that. I have a friend who goes to Queen Mary, and she was telling me that she has to walk between campuses for like 20-30 minutes, and sometimes she only has 1 hour break between like sessions, and in that break she has to walk and eat her lunch. So in terms of like not having a well-defined campus, those are some things that can get annoying, especially if you have multiple campuses. Thankfully with LSE, that's not really the case, so it's okay. Make sure that's something that you research into. If you really want a campus uni, London is probably not the place for you. But if you don't mind it, and if you're like willing to give that up, then probably consider London. And with the whole city thing in general, there is definitely the constant like hustle and bustle, and like everything is just moving quickly. And with a place like London, with a big city, that is definitely gonna be there whether you like it or not. So it is probably better if you do like it. If you're more of like a countryside person, London again is probably not the place for you, but I think that's one of the more obvious things. One more disadvantage of studying in London is something I didn't actually realize until very recently, is that the city is very catered towards like professionals. It's not very catered to students at all. It's very catered towards, you know, like the investment bankers, the lawyers, the, you know, like the people actually working. Like some cities have literally become student cities, and London is definitely not one of them. So if you really are wanting to be in a student city, then probably don't come to London. Another con that one of my friends gave me was that there are only small supermarkets in London, which can make things pricey. So like with Tesco Express, Sainsbury's Local, things like that, you only get small ones, and only as you start going a bit further out do you get like Lidl and like, you know, more normal suburby supermarkets. So if you're living in accommodation, that's another thing to bear in mind, that you're gonna have to go do your shopping in these small supermarkets, which tend to be more expensive. So that is it for the pros and cons of studying in London. I'm just gonna say a little bit about my own opinion and how I found studying in London so far. I am a Londoner myself, so I kind of already, you know, have the London vibe. I know what it's like. It's not really a surprise to me. Like I'd been to a lot of places in central London before, so it didn't really come as a shock, and I kind of knew my way around places already. I really like studying in London because of the aesthetic. I'm not gonna lie, the aesthetic is pretty nice. Being able to like dress up and go into London every single day is something I really love. And also to experience the hustle and bustle of the city. I'm very much a city kind of girl, and like just being able to experience that every day is a really nice thing for me. And I feel like with London, like every day is different. Even though you're going to the same place every single day, you're coming back, it does feel different, and I'm not sure that that is something you would get in perhaps a student city. And with London, there is a load of things to do, as I said, and you're probably not going to get bored of the city quickly. You'll always find different things to do. Like, even if it's not in central London, you have other places to go. So like that prospect is something that I like as well. Some of my friends at their accommodation, they have views of the Shard, they have views of like the city skyline, and it's really, really nice to be able to have that and to be able to live in London as a student. It's kind of crazy when you think about it, just because of how expensive it is. So yeah, like I personally really enjoy studying in London. You may be different. A load of other people from my school left London, they went up north. Some people went to Loughborough, Nottingham, a load of different places outside London. So it depends on you and your own preferences and that sort of thing. So when you're thinking about studying in London or not, and like doing university research, think about all the different factors that you have in mind that are important to you, your priorities basically, and think about if London would be a good fit for them, or just any city. That sort of thing should be running through your mind, and hopefully you'll be able to come to a decision on whether you'd like to study here or not. So that is it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you liked it, then give it a thumbs up, and also subscribe if you haven't already. And also, if you never want to miss my content, then press the bell icon as well, so that way you're gonna get notifications for all my videos. And if you have any requests for any videos you'd like me to do, then put them in the comments. I've received a few already, so I'm gonna try and do them as soon as I can. But that is it for today's video. I will see you next time. Bye!